Today's session, webinar today is focused on GCSE, preparing our young ones for this important examination, which they will be writing at some point in their life. And we did mention that this session is specifically for parents who have children in KS3 or KS4, because some of the things we will be looking at discussing is on preparing the children, young people, for this exam. So parents in KS3 are more welcomed to even join this session as well. And to start with, I would want to introduce our speaker for today, Tosin Oliide. She is a senior qualifications manager, and she's quite experienced when it comes to GCSE qualifications. Her background is in science education, and she also has a background in special educational needs. So if you have young people who will be sitting these exams at some point who have special needs, please feel free to ask questions as regards to that as well, because Tosin would be able to also provide information as regards to whatever provisions are being made for children with special needs. I experience spans over 18 years as head of science and SENCO in the UK educational system, both in working in independent and state secondary schools. She's also a qualified dyslexia assessor, and she's renowned for coaching, mentoring new entrants into the teaching profession. She runs I think a parent forum, Treasures Parenting, a platform where she runs parenting workshops and supporting parents to navigate this, complex educational system in the UK. One of the things we're hoping that we'll be able to get from today's session is to really break down every information as regards to GCSE preparation and how we as parents can support our young people through this whole process. So join me as I welcome Tosi as she takes on board this particular information. Just to say that if you have questions, please use the chat. Drop your questions in the chat, and I would pick that up as we go along and pass it on to Tosi to respond to any questions you have. It's meant to be an interactive session, so please feel free to put your questions, dropping your questions in the chat, and let's get the best out of today and tap into Tosin's wealth of experience on GCSE examinations and qualifications. So Tosin, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Lovely to be here, and thank you, Bumi, for inviting me. So like Bumi said, it's going to be interactive because I don't want to start talking about things that are not relevant to you, although I will try and give you a bit of background of how the UK educational system works. So I will be asking, I hope the chat is enabled, because I'm going to be asking some questions which will guide and inform what we are going to speak about today. So my first question is, what year is your child in? What school year is your child in? And the second question is, what level of understanding of GCSE do you have? Is it no idea, basic, or intermediate? So the first, okay, I can see responses coming in. Okay, basic, right. Year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, 9, and 7. Okay, right. No idea, basic. Okay, that's good. So let me start with explaining how the, okay, it's O-level exam like WAEC. Okay, good. Okay, so let me explain the UK secondary educational system and how it works. And I'm assuming that we are all from Nigerian background. God, please correct me if I'm wrong. So secondary education is Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. And basically, it's 5 years compared to Nigeria, which is 6 years in secondary school. So the UK secondary school system is 5 years for Okay, thank you. It's 5 years for secondary education. And then there's 2 years A-level, after which your children can go on to university if that's what they want to do, or they can go on to do apprenticeship or a degree apprenticeship, or whichever pathway they want to get into. Now, so the 5 years is split into two. Year 7, 8, and 9 is Key Stage 3. And that's equivalent to Nigeria's JS1, 2, and JS3. Now, one difference between here and there is that there isn't any exam at the end of year 9, which is Key Stage 3. Compared to Nigeria, I think that's changing soon also. Compared to Nigeria, where you do exams at the end of your JS3 and then you move on to SS. So then Key Stage 4, which is the GCSE years, is years 10 and year 11. And that's where secondary school ends. They then have to go on to do A-levels or to college to do either A-levels or BTech or any other pathway that they want to go into. But they have to be in education your children have to be in education up to the age of 18. One of the differences between here and Nigeria also is the fact that you progress through the secondary school based on your age, not based on your ability. So if your child is very gifted academically, they cannot jump from year 7 to year 10 or year 7 to year 9. No, they still have to go through from one year to another, moving through. And one of the other difference that you will find is that progression through the secondary school is not based on they still do end of year. Each school will conduct end of year exams, but it doesn't really count that much towards anything. It's important. I'm going to come back to it, but it doesn't determine whether they would go on to the next school year or not. They all go through to the next school year. So that's important for you to know. However, it is very important, their progress during those years, very important, because that's part of the foundation needed for their success at GCSE. And so whilst it doesn't determine whether they will be promoted or move through the year, but it is important because that's where they start to gain the knowledge, the foundational knowledge needed to be successful at GCSE. And it's also important because that is where you start to see their interests, and then you can determine or you can decide which option subjects they will take. Now, let me come to option subjects. So from year 7 to year 9, they do all the subjects. And then once they get into year 10, which is GCSE year, their core subjects, and I think we've mentioned this before in a previous session that we went through, they are core subjects, and the core subject is the one that they all have to do. So English, maths, English literature, science are core subjects that your children have to do. They have no option. So there isn't anything like I'm an art student or I'm a commercial student or I'm a science student. No, science is compulsory here. They have to do it. Now, the science one, they can either do combined science or do triple science. Basically, what that means is the combined science will give them the equivalent of 2 GCSE grades. So it carries the weight of 2 GCSE grades, whilst the triple science carries the weight of 3 GCSE grades. This is also where it also gets confusing or interesting. The fact that they're doing combined science, they still have to do physics, chemistry, biology. But what the difference is between combined science and triple science is that the content in combined science is smaller than the content in triple science. So if you think of the content of, for example, biology, chemistry, physics as maybe 3 units in each one. So if you're doing combined science, you would do 2 units of biology, 2 units of chemistry, 2 units of physics. So someone who's doing triple science will do all the 3 units of each of them, and that's then equivalent to 3 GCSE grades. So those ones will get GCSE grade in biology, a separate grade in chemistry, a separate grade in physics. Whereas with combined science, they will just have 2 grades, either a grade 9-9 or a grade 7-7 or grade 7-8. That's the way it will be considered. So those are the core subjects. Then you have optional subjects. Now, optional in the sense that you can pick which ones you want to do. So options from subjects like geography, business, design, technology, just trying to think of which other ones, the music, some schools we have computing as well, food, technology, media. So depending on what subjects the schools are offering or the school is offering will determine which options they would offer to your child. There's also history as well. Now, some schools will make it compulsory that you have to do a language. So there will be the options of either French, Spanish, or German. Those are the 3 MFL languages. They're called MFL, Modern and Foreign Languages. So French, Spanish, and not Chinese. Some schools offer Chinese, by the way, but French, Spanish, and German. So those are the 3 languages. At Key Stage 3, that's from year 7, your child would have been exposed to all these subjects. And what usually schools do is that they start to look at who has got an aptitude for that subject, who's doing really well, particularly for the option subject. What you find is that option subject teachers will want the best students to come in to do their subject so that they would have fantastic results. And so this is why it's also important that as your child is going through the years, they have to take each subject seriously if they want to do it as an option. So if your child wants to do geography, for example, they need to be doing really well so that it's easier for them to take up that subject as an option and also for them to succeed in that subject. So right from Key Stage 3, you need to start looking at which subjects your child is doing well on. And so that could give you pointers towards which option subjects they will take up. And also, you also need to kind of start thinking beyond GCSE. You need to start thinking up to A levels and what do they want to go and do at university. The reason why that is important is if your child wants to go and do, let's say, for example, something relating to computing or digital technology, as an example, and your child does not pick an option of computing at GCSE, you can see that the foundation will not be there. Whilst your child may be able to kind of find their way around it, but you're already putting the child at a disadvantage because they haven't got the basic skill, the foundational knowledge to take on that course at A level. Or if your child wants to go and do music for A level, as an A level subject, but they haven't picked music as an option, and they haven't had any, they haven't got any experience of music outside of school, then they can't pick those subjects. So your option subjects in some ways would determine what subject you're likely to be able to do at A levels and what subject you're likely to be able to do in the university, or what A level combinations you can have to take on the university one. So let me work back a little bit. So going on to the university, for example, if you're going to do an engineering course at university, most engineering courses will say that you must be doing A-level physics and maths. And then most schools, most universities will say, well, any other subjects that you want to add as a third option. If your child did not pick A-level physics or did not do A-level physics, that means they've already kind of knocked themselves out of going in for an engineering course at university. Or they will be very restricted to the university they can pick, because very few universities would accept a non-physics subject. They would either, some universities, no, very few universities will say either A-level physics or maths. but the vast majority of them will say both of them for engineering. So if you want to, you can go onto university's website, look at the various courses, and look at the entry requirements, and then start to work your way back to what A-level subject my child needs to take, and then what GCSE options do they need, apart from the core one. What some parents do is they look at the subjects that can lend itself to any course. So you'll find that maybe parents will encourage their children to do maths, and then any of the sciences, because you find that most science subjects will lend themselves to any pathway that your child wants to go to, apart from specialized ones. So those are the kind of things that you need to start thinking about. Now, I noticed that, you said, a number of you said that your children are in year 7, they're in year 8. It is now that you need to start thinking about preparing them and also start thinking about the option subjects. The reason is this: a number of schools, in fact, the vast majority of UK schools, have now reduced the key stage 3 to 2 years. So you find that by the time your child has finished year 8, some schools are already talking about options and asking them to pick options from year 9. Whereas normally they shouldn't pick options until the end of year 9. And some schools start teaching GCSEs from year 9 because the GCSE curriculum is so big that schools tend to find it difficult to finish. So they start in year 9. And if you're still waiting for them to finish year 9 before deciding the options, what you find is that you are on the back foot anyway, because the teachers and schools would have started teaching them. I know, for example, my daughter now, they've started teaching them GCSE subjects, and she's in year 9. Started teaching them GCSE subjects. So you need to start looking at what their strengths are and what their skills are. Now, you may say that, well, you don't have any idea, but start looking at their reports. I'm sure you would have at least one report for each year, and also parents' evening. That starts to give you an indication of which subjects are their strengths and which subjects are their weaknesses. So you then need to start thinking of the subjects that are their weaknesses. Are those core subjects or are they option subjects? Is this something that your child wants to do? If those are core subjects, then you need to start thinking of what exactly is the issue. Is it a lack of revision or a lack of understanding? Or is the child in a class where, not much learning goes on? And so identifying the problem will help you to start looking at the solution. If it is a case of, lack of revision, then you need to start now doing 10 minutes, 15 minutes revision every day. Just going over what they've looked at in school is really, really important. It's better to start doing it at key stage 3, where there isn't that pressure of GCSE exam looming, so that it sort of becomes part and parcel of them. Even if it is just merely looking at it, you'll be amazed at what is retained by the child. So doing it in short bursts rather than asking them to sit for 3 hours a day would not 3 hours, a long period of time would not help. So asking them to spend 15 minutes going over what they've done in lesson for that day is really, really useful. So that's the bit about key stage 3. Now, I know that some of us have children in year 10 and year 11. I saw year 11 one. Okay, so we have to do crash course now on year 11. Now, year 11, by this time, you should know, or you must know, which exam board your child is sitting for each of their papers. Okay, so if you don't know what I mean by exam board, in Nigeria, WAEC is the only, I think, NECO, or I'm not quite sure which other one. WAEC, basically, you all do the same content, you all do You all do kind of similar exams. But here, there are at least 3 exam boards. There's AQA, there's OCR, there's EdXL, Pearson EdXL. A few schools do Welsh exam boards, that's WJEC. So basically, these exam boards are the ones that set GCSE exams. And schools have the liberty to pick whichever exam boards that they want to go with. And they don't have to stick to the same exam board for all their subjects. So you might find that in some schools, EdXL is maths and AQA is English. So why it's important is that for each exam board, they have specifications, basically, which is, okay, that's good. It's, yes, like I said, some schools have different exam boards for different subjects. So for each exam board would have specification, what is called specification. Basically, it is what the child needs to know, what the child needs to be able to do for that subject. And you don't need any special password or anything to view those information. So if you go on Google now and just type in, so if you go on Google now and just type in, let's say AQA or EdXL, for example, and it will come up with the exam board and they would have subjects. So when you click on the subject, if it is science, for example, you click on science, it will show you things like specification, teaching and learning materials, assessment materials. So if your child is in year 10 and year 11, that should be your daily go-to, the exam board website. Yeah, good. So we've got AQA there, and then there's EdXL and there's OCR. So the specification. So if your child, and why this is important is your child would have this vast amount of notes or a textbook they're using. Sometimes it is not everything, as much as you want your child to have this vast amount of knowledge, but it isn't everything that your child will be assessed on. So the specification is a guide for you and your child to know how they would ask questions about it, what sort of things they're looking for. Now, there's this, it isn't, the exams are set up in a way to check 3 key things. So it isn't about recall of knowledge that, oh, I've crammed all of these things, I've memorized all of them, and they would just ask me, what is the meaning of this? What is the definition of this? And that's all I have to write. No, that's not the way exams work here. The exams, so there are 3 key, what is called assessment objectives, and that will be in the specification. Okay. So there are 3 things called assessment objectives, and that will be in the specification. Now, the 3 assessments, there's AO1, AO2, some subjects have up to AO5, but really, one is about recall of information, and that usually carries like 30% of the questions that come out in the exams. So that is the one where, for example, if it is science, they would ask you what is photosynthesis, and you just write photosynthesis is this. Or in geography, they ask you a question and then you put it down. Whereas there's another one that is AO2, which is application of knowledge. So what you know, what your child knows, how can they apply it to different scenarios? How can they make use of that information? So that is where you would have context-based question. A child did this. Why do you think the child has done this? Or somebody observed that plants growing in the dark are not growing as well as the ones growing in the light. Why? And that question expects them to be able to apply their knowledge of photosynthesis to explaining phenomena. And you also have things about describe and explain. So I'll come back to exam command words as well. So, and then the third one is around analyzing data. If it is science, If it's maths as well, application of data, and in some subject, geography, business, analyzing data, making conclusions from data. So you can see that it isn't enough for you to just memorize all the content. Your child needs to have that practice of how to apply that knowledge. And this is where having access to past papers and the mark scheme that are available on the exam board website is important. So by now, if your child is in year 11, they must have done a lot of past papers. Past papers will get them familiar with how each exam board asks their question, how they set out the question paper, because different exam boards set out their question paper in different ways. And that's why it's important for you to be familiar with the specification, look at past assessment materials on the website. For example, in some subjects, the first set of questions might be multiple choice, and then the rest will be maybe 2 marks or 3 marks question. And for some, you could have extended writing questions where they have to write a lot, and that is information that is worth maybe 6 marks. Whereas for some exam board, for their specification, the way they do their assessment is it's all 1 mark here, 2 marks here. There isn't anything like multiple choice, that sort of thing. So your child needs to get familiar with the assessment papers to know how the questions will be set out in the exam. The second part to this is that also it gives them to start to see how the examiner thinks when they are marking, because they have access to the mark scheme of the specimen material. So they can also, when they're answering questions, they're not just writing it from their own perspective. A number of students, and they write like the examiner knows what is in their head. So they don't put some specific information that is needed. And so having practice of those past papers is a useful tool to see that, look, you need to put everything down. You need to assume that your examiner the examiner does not know you, does not know your skill, does not know your ability, does not know what you're thinking. So it's what you put down on paper that the examiner will see. So from now on, please, if you don't have that idea of what the specification might be too bulky for you to read, but most exam boards will have specification at a glance, which is probably like 2 or 3 pages that gives you a bit of an overview. And if you want to help your child with a particular concept that they are struggling with, you can then go into the specification itself, so you can see what exactly the exam board expects them to do. So, for example, if a child is revising geography and they keep struggling on maybe the field work aspect of it, they're not getting as much marks as they should, and you want to just help them out with revision because you have some idea of geography, but you don't know which level of information or how much to go into, then you go to the specification. The specification will tell you they need to understand what dunes and valleys and blah, 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 and all of that information. And so you can then help them with their revision. And similar thing with, the skills that they need to be able to develop as well. And that's where, if you have an understanding of which exam board they're using, what the specification says, then you can help them with their revision a little bit more. Now, like I said, by now, they shouldn't be spending much time trying to, I know some children try to write notes as a way of revision. Whilst that is good, by this time, they should have covered all the content. If they haven't, don't let them spend too much time on reading up too much. Let them start to look at past questions and use that. And if they struggle with a particular question, then they go back to their book, read it, and come back to the question. Because a lot of students just sit on the textbook. I'm reading the textbook. Like I said, reading the information isn't what you'll be assessed on, it is how you apply it. And so having a go at exam papers is a good way of knowing where the gaps are. And then you can quickly go back and read and then have a practice and then come back to the content itself. It builds their confidence. Like I said, on each exam board's website, actually with the specification, you can also find out on your child's school's website which exam board they are following for each subject. So usually most schools will have their Key Stage 3 curriculum, their Key Stage 4 curriculum. And when you click on there, for each subject, you click on it, it will tell you which of the exam boards they are using, and you can go and check them yourself and have a practice. If you want to do a crash course in revision and exam techniques, if your child hasn't started yet, go on to websites like Physics. I think I've mentioned this before, Physics and Maths Tutor. Physics and Maths Tutor is good because they have split the exam questions for each subject into bite-sized topics. So if your child has done like a plan of, okay, I'm going to read cells today, they can read that cells and go on to the Physics and Maths Tutor and find exam questions relating to cells and do those questions. And the mark scheme is there as well, so they can mark and check their progress. So it helps. The website is free. There's nothing to pay there. So it's easy to just do, little bit of revision here and have some sort of assessment to check their understanding. Okay, so I'm just trying to see what other questions we've got here. Okay, so now there's something else called, I haven't talked about, foundation and higher tier. For some subjects, that's science, maths, and languages. The subjects are put into either foundation or higher. And this is also, this information is useful across the key stage, whether your child is in Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 4. If your child is doing foundation tier, it means the highest grade they can get, even if they score 100% on their paper, the highest grade they can get is a grade 5. And that sometimes puts a limit to what they can do at A level and at university. So if, for example, a child has been put onto foundation tier for maths and they get a grade 5, it is very, very, very difficult for that child to go on to do a maths-related subject at A level or at university, which is why it's important that you check and ask which tier your child has been entered for in those subjects. Higher tier, they can get, the maximum grade is a grade 9. They can get that one. But the lowest grade they can come to is a grade 4. So if the grade boundary for a grade 4 is 40%, for example, and a child scores 39% on a higher paper, then that 39% is considered a fail. They don't get a grade. It's a grade U. U means ungraded. So there isn't the option of falling back to maybe a grade 3, a grade 2, or a grade 1 on a higher tier. But they can go as far as high as a grade 9, which is the highest grade. And I think it's equivalent to an A star. We want to use that. So if you know your child very well and you know the strength of your child and you know they are very good in that subject, then they shouldn't be doing foundation tier on that paper. Now, yes. Now, what you can do, if your child has already been put into a foundation tier for maths, the child can still do receipts the maths paper whilst at college to improve their grade. But it would mean that they have to do it in their own time, and it is additional burden to have. It is doable. I hope it is doable, because if your child is looking at if he is looking at going on to do something relating to engineering, then it's important that that maths is nailed, because it looks like that's the only option now, that there isn't any didn't get the computer options. Yes. The only way around it is just to get that higher maths grade at college. Okay, that's good. Now the college, I hope I've addressed that question, but I'll come back to the other bit about how college and apprenticeship work, because that's the other pathway that your child can go through. So generally, success at GCSE is understanding the examination landscape. How will your child be assessed? Which exam boards they will use? And making sure that they start the revision as early as possible and have a lot of practice with exam style questions, practice questions. Now, the other thing and also most schools would have done mocks by now. We are in February. So most schools do mock exams at the end of year 10 and then at the beginning of year 11, which sort of starts to give you an indication. So do not, ignore them. Do not ignore them. Let them focus on the mocks as if, it is the real exam. Because the mocks will do two things. One, it will let your child and you know where to focus on for the next few months before their main exam. Secondly, some schools some colleges or A-level or sixth forms will use the predicted grades from the mock as some sort of admission sifting work. So most schools will use the mock exams to give predicted grades. And if your child is applying to a sixth form, they will ask for predicted grades in order to know whether they're going to offer a place to your child or not. So that's very, very important. And that's why also if you have a child that is in year 12 as well, I would advise at A levels, whenever they do their mocks, please take it like it is the most important thing, because the predicted grades at year 12 is even much more important than the predicted grades at GCSE. Now, like I said, not all schools will consider predicted grades at GCSE. And at the end of the day, even if you don't get the predicted grades, it's basically grades that the teachers think your child is likely to get at the end, or when they do their GCSE or when they do their A level. So some sixth form colleges or A levels, they are not as important as university education, because if one sixth form does not accept your child, they can go to another sixth form and do the course. But for university, it doesn't work like that. They would only have option of 5 choices to pick at university. And those ones, it's done through a central base, which is called UCAS. And those ones will ask for predicted grades in order for the universities to make you offers in the first instance. And they make offers between February and March. But I know we're not there yet, but it's just something to start planning and thinking about. So, let's see if there's any other question. So, Bumi, please nudge me if there's any question that I've missed.
There's a question. What's the difference between college and year 12?
Okay, so at the end of year 11, there are various providers of that of the age 17 to 18 work. So there are sixth form colleges, and there are normal colleges, and there are sixth forms associated with schools. So, for example, some secondary schools will run from year 7 to year 13. So, in those secondary schools, they will run A-level subjects. So, sort of like the academic pathway. Now, they are standalone sixth form colleges. And basically, those ones run a mix of A-level and B.Tech. So they are standalone and they are sort of treated as like a mini university, whereby students will come when they have lectures and will go at the end of their lectures. And like I said, they have a mix of not just A-level subjects, they also have B.Tech subjects. I'll explain B.Tech in a minute. Whereas if it is a sixth form that is linked to a secondary school, they will still be treated. They have to come in the normal time student, everybody comes in, and they will close the normal time everybody closes. I mean, sometimes they give them a bit of what's it called, time at the end of the day to leave or at the end of the week to leave earlier than the others. But that is mostly academic. They mostly run A-level subjects. Whereas with colleges, there's the flexibility around around whether it's A-level or B.Tech. In addition, sixth form colleges run other things like level 3 qualifications or subjects that are not necessarily A-level or B.Tech. But if your child wants to have some sort of additional qualification in something, they can do it at college. They can also resit their maths or English. They will run lessons for that. Whereas for A-level schools, they don't usually run any sessions for maths and English resits. Now, let me say this here, that your child must pass maths and English. And passing maths and English means getting at least a grade 4. If they don't pass maths and English, they will have to keep resitting it until they turn 18. So that's a government requirement that you must pass maths and English. If the child doesn't pass maths and English at year 11, it doesn't mean they go back to year 11. They can still go to college, but they will have to resit their maths and English. And you'll find that most universities will ask for a grade 4 in maths and English. And I'm going to link it back to Key Stage 3. Please, from year 7, make sure that your child, even from primary school, if you've got a primary school age child here, make sure that their foundation is solid in maths and English. Once they get the grasp of maths and English, they can apply it to any other subject. Even for 11 plus, a number of parents will go on to start 11 plus tutoring and working on verbal reasoning and non-verbal reasoning. No, once your child understands the basics of maths and English, then verbal reasoning will be straightforward for them. Non-verbal reasoning will be straightforward for them. And it makes their journey through secondary school easier as well, because the skills they apply in other subjects comes through from maths and English. And I've also said that they must pass maths and English. That's a government's directive. Otherwise, they have to keep, doing the exam over and over again until they pass it. So I think now B.Tech. Yeah, I was talking about B.Tech. B.Techs are not. B.Tech are qualifications that are equivalent to, we have B.Tech level 2, B.Tech level 3. B.Tech level 2, they are equivalent to GCSE. And B.Tech level 3, they're equivalent to A-level. Now, one key difference between A-levels and B.Tech is that B.Techs are not assessed by end of year examination like you have with A-levels. So A-levels, you write your exam and then you get your grade. But with B.Tech, it could be, depending on which subject it is, it could be keeping a portfolio of something that you've done, carrying out a particular activity and doing a record of it and submitting it to the exam board, and then you get your grade. or you do a particular design, and then you answer some questions about that design, and you can have the assessments throughout the year. So you don't have to wait until the end of year 13, for example, to submit your work on that particular one. Now, the only challenge with BTech, now that would work for a lot of students because it means the pressure of doing exams will reduce, and they can show how best they, how well they know the subjects and show their skills to a good level without that exam pressure. The only challenge with BTech is that you have to pick a particular pathway. And that pathway does not lend, it then means that you've already narrowed your options right from your level 2, level 3. I mean, it's good that not all secondary schools offer BTech level 2. It's more common at level 3. So you can have something like BTech in applied science, BTech in dance, BTech in stage production, BTech in forensic science. Now, when I said that it narrows their option, if your child does a BTech in forensic science, it means that's the only pathway they can go at university. The grades are equivalent. So an A level, so you can still, a child will still get in if they have a distinction in BTech forensic science. It's considered it's given the same weighting as an A level grade. The only difference is that that child can only do forensic science. I hope that makes sense. Unlike if you do an A level in maths, at uni, you can pick any subject. You don't necessarily have to stick to maths. You can pick a combination of subjects that allows you to go for medicine, to go for computing, to go for banking, to go for economics, all of that. But with big tech, if you do forensic science, you can only use that qualification to get forensic science. If you do applied science, you can only use that qualification to get applied science. If you do BTech in food technology, it means you can only go for food technology. So unless your child is certain that, look, this is the pathway they want to go, then I would not recommend BTech because it restricts them.
There is a question, which is better or advisable, sixth form or college?
This one it depends on your child and how best they learn. Excuse me. So there isn't, they do the same thing. The level of support and the rigor of the subject is the same because they will all sit the same exam if they're doing A level. So it's more around what sort of atmosphere your child will thrive in or will be able to do their best. Sixth forms, usually they are smaller, whilst college is bigger. There's more independence. There's no teacher there's no teacher chasing after them to do any revision or to hand in work, which is like the downside of a college. But if your child is matured enough to be able to, do all of those things themselves without being necessarily guided, then a college is fine. The other thing as well is if your child wants to go to a university, the university is not going to ask whether you went to sixth form or a college. But the support to guide them to university is often lower in a college than you find in a sixth form. So it means that you will have to be doing a lot of the work in terms of chasing up deadlines, checking personal statements, pushing for a few things to guide them better. I mean, even if your child is at a sixth form college, you still need to have a knowledge of the process of admissions as well, so that you can, plan and start looking at places, university options. So, like I said, it depends on what sort of routine your child thrive best in. But there isn't a preference of one over the other when it comes to the next stage. It is more about the results that you have. Okay. See, any other question.
I think you've covered all questions for now.
Okay. Do we still have time?
Okay, there's a question. What's the difference between college and year 12?
There isn't a difference. So year 12 is part of college. So yeah, year 12 is part of college. So year 12, year 13 are sort of like the college years. So there isn't a difference between them. Some colleges are sort of like mini universities. So if someone comes in, we could find somebody who's 19 or 20 at a college doing like a level 3 diploma course in, let's say, childcare studies or something to that effect. So those ones wouldn't be considered to be year 12 or year 13. They will just be considered as diploma students. And you have mature students as well coming into colleges to do maybe some supplementary courses to help them in their jobs. But yet, year 12 in a sixth form is the same as year 12 in a college. So they would have the ones that are going through the A-level or BTech pathway, having those names of year 12 and 13, but there isn't a difference between year 12 in a sixth form college and year 12 in a college. Okay. Right. Any other
There's no other question in the chat. Please put your questions. If you have questions, please feel free to drop in the chat. I think one question that would come in for most parents whose kids are writing exams this year. I think it would be nice to understand the command. Is it command words?
Thank you.
Put more lights on that.
Okay.
And probably give parents tips on what we can do, because it's more or less like the 11th hour now, if I use that word. The exams, I think, will be starting in April, May. Some will kickstart in April or May. So any tips as regards to, subject specifics, revisions and whatever parents need to know to support their children.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So going back to the exam board's websites, they have, all the exam boards have something called command words. And they will usually give examples of how to use those command words. So command words are the words that are used in questions to indicate what the examiner wants you to do. Now, you may think that's easy and simple, but I can tell you they are not necessarily so, because the command words for each subject may sometimes differ. And for some of them, there are just slight nuances between them that if you haven't understood them really well, you would not know that there are differences between them. So for example, there's this common one, which is one that a lot of students make mistakes on, which says, describe this thing or describe this graph. And then the next question could then go on to say, explain this graph. I don't want to put us parents on the spot to say, well, so what's the difference between those two things and what do you do? So describe basically means what can you see? So if it's a set of data, what pattern is shown in the data? What trend can you see in the data? And also, how do you then explain the trend? So if it is a graph of the number of people who drive Volvo cars, so you then look at the trend or the number of people who drive Volvo cars on a particular street or in a particular area. So you could then look at trend like the further you are from the city center, or is it the more there are, or the less there are of Volvo car drivers or things like that. So those are the sort of trend that the describe word says. Explain means why. Why is the number increasing? Why is it decreasing as you move out from the area? And you get a lot of this in subjects like science, subjects like geography, subjects like business, subjects like sometimes history, you get a lot of those kind of words. And so when you're guiding your child, one of the things I use when I'm trying to tell students the difference between those two words is describe means what can you say? So if I'm describing someone, I could describe them based on the clothes they're wearing, the hairstyle they have on, that sort of thing. But when it says explain means why have they got that particular hairstyle on? Why have they got this particular clothes on or uniform? Is it because they're students or is it because, they're an adult? So those are the kind of things that they need to learn. So when it comes to explain using the word why, and so they start with, if they put the word because, it helps to guide them. So if a question has explain, yes, this is happening because, and then they start to think of why. Or even things like other command words like evaluate. I mean, we're all familiar with evaluate, but what you don't know is that when students are asked to evaluate, they must then make a conclusion. And that isn't written in the command words. So let them get familiar with command words. And usually, I think most exam boards now will put in bold the command word so that the students can understand what exactly they need to do. So getting familiar with this, once you and your child understand the exam words, you are sorted. The command words, you are sorted. So that's really, really important. Now, like I said, a lot of all the exam boards will have a definition of those keywords or command words on their website with examples of how to use them. And you as a parent can also have a look. Now, I know that you must be involved with their revision at this point in time. You cannot just leave your children to be doing their revision. Now, this does not mean that you become experts in the subject. You don't need to become experts, but the mere fact that you're sitting beside them as they are revising, or you're asking them to tell you what they have read, or tell you how they solved a particular problem, or talk you through how to solve a particular question, is a way of embedding a particular thing that they have revised. So you just need to nod your head, but by repeating it to you, it's kind of a means of retaining that information in their head. I mean, we say things like look, say, using multisensory techniques. So using the eyes, using the ears, and using the mouth, saying those kind of things, writing it they're all ways of helping them to retain the knowledge. My daughter did Spanish, and I can tell you, I do not understand Spanish, but I will be asking her a question in English. So how do you say this? How do you respond to this? She will say it back to me. I have no idea whether she's saying the right thing or not, but I know that, it's a technique for practicing the skills that is needed for our speaking assessment. So set a timetable, a structured timetable. Don't start with, you must spend 3 hours every day now revising. No, it's not going to work. You're all going to fail at it because you're starting from the top. So start small and build up. So it could be, let's do 30 minutes when you come back from school and then do 30 minutes at night in terms of the revision. So like I said, but make sure that there is the opportunity for them to apply what they have said, either by you asking them some questions or assessing them on some assessment papers. Okay, just do the question 1, 2, and 3. Let's talk through the mark scheme. For some of them, another way to help is just looking at the mark scheme while they do the question. Let them talk you through their thought process. Why have they picked, even if they failed a question or they didn't get it right, let them talk you through why they picked that answer. And it's an opportunity to then guide them. As a matter of fact, I would say that parents, you have a wealth of knowledge that you don't know you have. Especially if you've gone through, the university system. There's a wealth of knowledge that you have. And, that's the opportunity to kind of guide them and give them strategies as well that worked with you or did not work with you so that they don't make that same mistake. So start, have it like a structure. Let's say, like I said, start small and then gradually build up. Because when you start small, it gives you and the child that sense of achievement. Imagine if you start with 3 hours a day. You know that's not sustainable because you also have to work. They also have other things. It then feels like you then, end up not carrying on after 1 week and you feel like you failed. But if you start small, even if it's 15 minutes every day that you're doing, there's that sense of confidence booster that comes with achieving those ones. And that gives your child the, strength to then go on to say, okay, now that we've done 15 minutes, let's move on to 30 minutes. The other thing that you would, if your child is doing your exams in May, June, you would have had their mock exam results. What did that pick up? Is it time to call in somebody else to have some sort of tuition? That's one way. Or is it time for you to also, depending on what caused the issue, or why they struggled in a particular area, or is it time for you to maybe then dedicate more time to just checking that they are doing what they should be doing? So aside from, having that routine of regular revision, there's also, we've talked about you having access to all of the information, doing a lot of assessment materials. So just to give you the heads up that when it's now a few days or a week or so close to the exam, you may find that when they do the assessment paper, they're not doing well. Or the questions they're not even that interested in reading. It is normal. If they've been doing well, it happens most of the time when people have been doing a lot of revision. I mean, if you've ever done driving tests, you realize that, you do well, and then your last lesson before the driving test, you're just making all sorts of mistakes. So don't just give them the opportunity to rest and relax before the main exam. They should, and another thing to encourage them is that they can burn the midnight oil now, so that the other things will be easy for them closer to the exam. So those are the kind of, things that I think we can put in place right now. Short, intensive revision, you asking them questions about what they have read, what they have revised, let them talk you through their thought process. Before I forget about this as well, when they talk you through their thought process, you would be able to have an understanding of, okay, why are they not doing well on this question? Is it taking them time to process the information? Is it taking them time to write their answers down? And that would lead me to the next bit about something that not every parent know, which is access arrangements. Access arrangements are things that helps your child, that levels the playing ground, or playing fields rather, for your child to be able to show what they know without any barriers. Now, access arrangements could be that they get extra time in their exams, or they get access to a scribe, or to a reader, or they have rest breaks. Most of the time, these access arrangements should have been in place from maybe year 9, some in year 10. But we often find that for some children, those things do not show themselves until, when they have accumulated enough knowledge for them to be able to show that this is a struggle. So, for example, some students are very, very good. They have developed coping mechanism. And because they find things so easy, until the demand of the subject gets more or stronger, you wouldn't be able to figure out that they're actually struggling with processing or even writing. As a result of COVID, a lot of children now struggle to write legibly. So it could be things like getting them to type their work rather than write, because the process of making the handwriting legible takes time, and so they end up not finishing their exam. So if your child isn't finishing assessments, isn't finishing exam, then you need to start looking what is going on. Or when they're talking to you, they say the right thing, but when it comes to exam or tests, they're not putting it down on paper properly. So there could be some sort of issues with processing. Now, there's this misconception that your child needs to have a special educational needs before they can get access arrangements. No, they don't. As long as it is an ongoing issue, there isn't a special educational needs that is for processing difficulties. So as long as it is a sustained issue, then they can do assessments. The school should be able to do assessments to get them the extra time. If they don't meet the threshold for extra time, the school can look for things like rest breaks or using a laptop. Rest breaks means that, they can step away from the exam or from the assessment for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then come back in to carry on with their exam. Laptop, so these are school delegated access arrangements. They don't need approval from anybody. The school can decide to put it in place. They can type their work in their exams, so giving them the opportunity to make their handwriting legible, because when exams are marked, the scripts are not sent to the examiner. They are usually scanned. And so if your child's handwriting is illegible, they're already, on the back foot. And so the examiner will just give a mark that they feel is best that they can give if they can't read it. But if they're able to type, the school is able to put that in place, then it helps them to be quicker, helps them to process the information, and to be able to articulate themselves in their written work easily. So if you think there's an issue, speak to your child's form tutor or the SENCO. Don't let them fob you off. I know that the deadline for applying for extra time, I think it's gone now, February, but you can still apply. Schools can still apply. They just need to produce a substantial amount of evidence that the child needs that. So please don't forget that is there. And I know we are always cautious about labels and things like that. Let me say this, that the access arrangements will not show their certificate. When they get their results, it will not be there that, they had this access arrangement, they had that access arrangement. No, it will not show anywhere. And it also helps because if your child has had access arrangements at GCSE, if they can speak to the sixth form college that they have had access arrangements. So those ones can also start to put it in place if they choose to, if your child wants to. Okay. So I hope I've covered everything around preparing for exams. I'm sure you were expecting me to say that, oh no, if you do this, your child will certainly get all the things that they need. But I can say that there are two key things you need to have: information and commitment, time commitment. Those are the two things. Information, knowing where, like I said, the specification, the exam materials are, and practicing them, and then dedicating time to looking through and having all of those revision sessions with your child. And do not let them in terms of revision techniques, actually, let me speak about this quickly. Revision techniques, each child has, their own revision techniques. Some of them would prefer to listen to a podcast. And so if they prefer to listen to things, there are lots of YouTube videos which are about, exam questions or particular topics that they can watch, if that's the way that they want to do their revision. So some could be visual. So YouTube videos, like I said, there are lots of educational materials on YouTube. They can watch YouTube videos of somebody maybe going through how to work out the solution to something, and then they work through it. It could be listening to podcasts, which they can do, or it could be they, reading out what they have done. It could also use flashcards. So for some subjects, they have to remember definitions. So having those flashcards where they put, some key definitions, they look at it, they say it, or post-it notes, put it at the back of their door or their mirrors. And so as they are walking past or in the toilet, even I've seen some students put, those post-it cards, they put it around areas of the house where they go to a lot. So as they're walking past, they're looking at it and using it as a form of revision. So if your child is one that does not want to just sit down at a desk and be reading for ages, those are other options that you could look at. Or tell them to do a mind map of a particular concept and then put it up, and they can teach you again what that particular concept. So those are ways of, doing the revision, embedding the knowledge that that is essential for whatever they need to do. Now, let me speak about English. And this is something that comes up a lot. No, so for their English papers, there's the reading and there's the writing. The reading is around reading comprehension. So they have a text that they have to read and then answer some questions around it. The writing one is where it gets technical, and a lot of our children, they can speak English, they understand English, they can write English. But the challenge is the English writing paper here is somewhat different because they are expected to write in a particular way. You're expected to use some, what do they call it, devices in the writing. It's almost like you have to follow a particular structure to how you write. And if your child doesn't follow that structure to the way the examiner expects them to write, then they probably won't get the mark. And it doesn't mean that your child does not know how to write English, but it's just that you have to use some devices, you have to use alliterations, you have to use simile, metaphor, or even the English literature, you have to use some words in the way you describe things. And that is why, like I said, it is essential that you read the specification and you look at exemplars, you look at past papers, so that you will not start thinking, oh, but my child can speak, my child can write a letter, but how come they're failing English? So there is that structured approach to the English writing paper and the the English literature paper as well. Okay. I think I've covered everything. Is there any other one I haven't mentioned for me?
I think there is a question in the chat. Just give me a second, let me get that. What's the right time, class, to start applying to sixth form or college for the child's A level?
Okay, so all colleges or sixth form will only accept application from when the child is in year 11. So they have the application window open, I think from October of their year 11 so October, some of them will leave it open till February of their year 11. So there isn't any sixth form college that would open their application like a year before or anything like that. No, it's when they're in year 11. Now, if we're talking about when do you need to start looking, then you can start looking when they are in year 10. So a number, in fact, almost all sixth form colleges and sixth form centers and colleges will have open evenings. So start attending those from when they're in year 10, so that you have a feel of what they offer, what support is in place for them. Ask them questions about how many of their, if your child is interested in going on to university, ask questions around how many of their students go on to university to study that particular course. What's their success rates? All of that questions. So those ones you need to start from year 10. The fact that you've attended an open day does not mean that you have to then come to that school, or nobody will force you to come to that school, but attend as many open evenings as you can or open days as you can whilst the child is in year 10. So it helps you to have a flavor of what your child will experience if they stay in that school and what their success rate is, and also opens your eyes to other subjects that we may not have considered. So that's ideally when I would say that you should start looking at sixth form, but the applications will have to go in when the window opens. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions, parents? If you have any questions, this is actually the time to drop in your questions, or if you can feel free to unmute yourself and just ask your questions. I think we have just a few minutes left, so please let's take this opportunity to ask Tosin any question whatsoever as regards to GCSE arrangements, GCSE revision techniques, and whatever support that we think we need for our children. So please feel free to ask question. There is a question now, when is the right time to start applying to sixth form or college for the child's A-level? I think that's been answered, but if you want to summarize that again.
I said sixth form colleges have application windows, and it's usually from October of year 11 to February. So you need to go to each sixth form to look each sixth form's website to look at when the application portal will open. But like I said, you can't apply a year before. It has to be when they're in year 11. But you can start attending open evenings from when they're in year 10. So you can have a feel of what they offer. Right.
I'm not sure if there's any other question. Well, if we still have questions, please use the chat to drop in your questions. And if you think of any questions later on, even after this webinar, please feel free to write to us at info@africanines.org, and we'll get our expert views on that. Oluwatoyin, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Just want a clarification because this is quite new to me. So based on what I've gathered so far, so if you go to college rather than going to sixth form, does that mean you could go into working as a vocation rather than going to the university? Or will you explained, but I didn't get it very well. Or will the college and sixth form tailor the child towards university for both? You've explained the advantages. I gather that, but just to clarify on this question. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Olutoyin. The colleges also offer A levels. What determines whether your child will go on to university is about which qualification they take or which pathway they take. So it's about whether they do A levels, and even BTech will take them to university. But like I said, BTech is restricted in that it is subject specific, so they can only do that subjects that they've done their BTech in at university. So it doesn't matter whether they do their A levels at sixth form or at college, they still get the same qualification. I hope that makes sense. So it's not a case of colleges would only colleges will not lead you to university. No, colleges run A-level qualifications and they run other vocational qualifications. That's just the difference. And the A-level that you do in college is the same A-level that you do in sixth form. So it's just that colleges have more options of different pathways that isn't just A-level, whereas sixth forms only run A-levels mostly. So one isn't better than the other. It's just that there are more options at colleges. And I think someone asked at the start about apprenticeship. I hope I've answered the question, Olutoyin. So someone asked about apprenticeship. Apprenticeship usually it is what it says exactly, that you learn on the job and you get paid some sort of money whilst you're learning, and then you qualify at the end, but you don't get a BSc because it isn't a university degree. However, there are now degree apprenticeship. And these are run by companies in conjunction with some universities. So whilst 60% of the students' time is spent doing apprenticeship, 40% will be spent doing some courses at the university, and the university accredits it. But it takes like longer. So it takes maybe like 5 years instead of 3 years that, doing a straight university degree will lead them to. So that's also an option. Some parents find it cheaper because they don't have to pay school fees. Their child gets paid whilst working, but it just means that they then have to stay with that company for the whole of the 5 years to complete that degree apprenticeship.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other question?
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Please, I want to ask for A levels. For to get admitted to A level school. Is it the same way, like the way council regulates the secondary school or schools that children can go, or you can just apply to any school you like, whether sixth form, whether college? I hope there's no. I just want to know if council will still use closeness to houses, or what they do to place students into primary and secondary school for A levels too.
Okay, so the short answer is no. The council has no involvement with sixth form and A levels at all. Their job ends when the child is in year 7, or if you do in-year application. So for sixth form, you and your child will be the ones to apply directly to the university, to the college or sixth form. And those ones do not offer admissions based on geographical location. It's more about they will tell you the admission criteria, which is more about the GCSE grades. So you can apply to any and however many sixth form or colleges you want to. What's it called? The local authority do not get involved with that at all.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we are about just rounding up now, and I'll just quickly take few things that parents should take note of. First and foremost, we'd like to thank everyone that has joined us for this webinar. I hope you all have found it quite useful. We have a survey that we would like you to help us complete, because your feedback is quite important for us to improve on our services. So please feel free to scan the QR code. I've dropped the link in the chat as well. So please just click on it and just, I think it's just probably 1 minute or so to complete our survey. Once you even leave this webinar, it will also prompt on either your laptop or your phone. So please, we need your feedback. For parents who have joined that are currently on our GCSE pod, we have a group for parents where we offer GCSE pod. GCSE pod is an award-winning digital content and revision platform for students. It's often used by schools, but Africaness offers a supplementary education for students at the moment. So we currently have a license to offer GCSE pod. So we currently use it at the moment, and we found it quite useful for students to help in terms of their revision. Like Tosin did mention, some students learn very well by, visuals, by looking at videos. And that's what the pod also does. We assign, videos to children to help with their revision, and is focused on the examining boards, and as well as also focused on different subjects. So we offer from maths, English, sciences, and all range of subjects, including languages as well. So for those on the GCSE pod group with Africaners, please, as you've heard, this is a very good tool that we can also use in terms of supporting our children with revision. So please, let's continue to encourage them to keep on it. And for those that are not, if you want to join, please, you can send an email to info@africaness.org. We currently have a waiting list, to be honest, but we'll see how we can accommodate everyone. We normally put our video recordings on our website. So if you scan that QR code or go through that link, which is also in the chat, it will take you to our parent resource page. where we have lots of resources. We'll be putting some resources from Tosin today. We'll be putting that on the platform, on the parent resource page as well. And we'll be writing to every parent. If you registered, we'll be writing to every parent to be able to access these resources as well. So we'll send the links to everyone. We're currently running a survey. It's focused on Black and minority ethnic families. Please, we need your input on this. It's going to help us as an organization to carry out a research on how race has an impact on children. We all know the impact of racism on young people and on their mental and social well-being. So please feel free to scan the QR code. I think I dropped the link in the chat as well. Please help us to complete that survey. It will help really in terms of our research outcome for children. That's also the same QR code. We are online and we often, post all our activities for parents and for children on our social media pages. So feel free to join us. Just follow us on any of the social media pages: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and feel free to write to us if you have any questions. And we have our website there as well. And I think that is it from me. A bit on, just to summarize what we've heard today, tips for students, like Tosin did mention, if you're in KS3, is an opportunity for you to start building on your revision notes, have a revision timetable, use flashcards, have space practice, and use a lot of past papers. It's very important that we start helping our children at the moment in terms of their revision, break it down into short and very short chunks. Like Tosin did say, don't give children an hour to revise, but break it down into smaller chunks so that they're able to assimilate faster, and use spaced practice as well. We will be sending this to everyone so that you're able to read through and revise and look through some of the advice that has been given today. Like Tosin did mention, the command words, there is the describe, the explain, the discuss, the evaluate, and comment on. We will share this to every parent that have registered. And it's quite important that we have an overview of what these command words are and support our children in understanding what it is and how to apply it to every questions. One of the strategies I've also used for past papers with my son is I use the 3-pen system. I give them 3 pens: black, blue, and red. And the black, I when they do exam papers, I tell them to write notes. If they're quite good in that particular topic, they use a black pen. If they need to do a bit more revision, they use a blue pen. If they don't understand that topic at all, I tell them to use a red pen. So it helps them focus and target where the weak areas are and where they really need to revise or put more effort in. So that's one strategy that you can use. In all, we want to wish all our parents and their children, success in their exams. If your child is in KS4 and they're writing exams in the next couple of months, we want to wish you all the best and all the success. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to write to us. We'll get our experts to respond to it. And for those that are still in KS3, looking at having the exams in the nearest future, is an ample time for us to start, putting things together now and start using all these strategies and tips that we have to start equipping our children and preparing them for the exams ahead. I think that is it from me. Tosin, is there any last word for our parents?
Just to say thank you for your questions and thank you for having me. And like I said, you are the best support that your child can have. And I know you can do this. And I hope you will take on board, the things that we've said and utilize them. So, and I wish you all the success. I'm sure your children would do really well. So all the best.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Have a very good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Tosin, for this wonderful session. Thank you very much. Thank you.